When British troops took them prisoner, some young German soldiers did something unexpected. They smiled. Not because the war was over. Not because they had won, but because they had not been captured by the Soviets. By 1944 and 1945, the Third Reich was collapsing. Cities were burning, supply lines were shattered, and teenage boys, some barely 16, were being handed rifles and told to stop entire armies. On the Western Front, they faced British and American forces. On the Eastern Front, they faced the unstoppable advance of the Red Army. And to many German soldiers, there was a world of difference between the two. The war in the East was brutal beyond imagination. When Adolf Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa in 1941, it wasn't just a military campaign. It was a war of annihilation. Villages were destroyed, civilians massacred, Soviet POWs were deliberately starved. By the time Soviet forces began pushing west in 1944, the desire for revenge burned fiercely. The Eastern Front became a nightmare of retribution. German soldiers heard stories of harsh marches into Siberian labor camps, stories of starvation and freezing winters, stories that many who went east as prisoners never came back. And some of those stories were true. Hundreds of thousands of German POWs died in Soviet captivity from disease, hunger, and exhaustion. Many wouldn't return home until the mid-1950s. The Western Allies were different. The British generally followed the Geneva Conventions. German prisoners were disarmed, processed, and sent to camps in Britain or North America. They worked on farms. Some were even allowed to attend classes. It wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't a death sentence. So when exhausted German teenagers saw British uniforms instead of Soviet ones, some felt something unexpected. Relief. Imagine being 17. Your country is collapsing. Your leaders are gone or hiding. Artillery is shaking the ground. And suddenly, a British soldier tells you to drop your weapon and hands you a cigarette instead of a bullet. For many, surrendering westward wasn't betrayal. It was survival. War isn't just about who wins battles. It's about who you fall into the hands of when the shooting stops. And for thousands of young German soldiers in 1945, being captured by the British didn't feel like defeat.